In Hebrews 2:14 and 15, we read these words, "Since the children have flesh and blood, he too shared in their humanity, so that by his death he might break the power of him who holds the power of death, that is, the devil, and free those who all their lives were held in slavery by their fear of death." Welcome to the final part of our series on When You Die. Theologian Adolf von Harnack said in his lecture, "The Christian Religion in the Apostolic Age," Christ's grave was the birthplace of an indestructible belief that death is vanquished and that there is life eternal. It is useless to cite Plato, useless to point to the Persian religion and the ideas and literature of later Judaism. All that would have perished. But the certainty of the resurrection and of a life eternal, which is bound up with the grave in Joseph's garden, has not perished. And on the conviction that Jesus lives, we still base those hopes of life in an eternal city, which make our earthly life worth living and tolerable. He delivered them who, through fear of death, were all their lifetime subject to bondage. The good news? You don't have to be in bondage to the fear of death. Dr. Simon Greenleaf, who was the Royal Professor of Law at Harvard in the 1800s and known as one of the world's greatest authorities on legal evidence, shone the searchlight of his immense knowledge on the evidence for the resurrection of Jesus Christ and revealed every thread of that evidence to the most probing critique. And when he did, he concluded that the evidence was so tremendous that in any unbiased courtroom on earth, it would be proclaimed as a historical fact. So what does all of that mean for us as believers? Simply this, that Christ's resurrection guarantees ours. Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, a leading authority on death and dying, and Dr. Raymond Moody Jr., both well-known psychiatrists, examined the case histories of over 500 people who came back to life after being pronounced dead by their physicians. Their research convinces anyone with an open mind. The people in this study described either a location of beauty, marvel, joy, and peace, or they described something dreadful. And although their bodies were real, they reported floating outside them. After being confirmed dead, some who were blind were able to see. They talked about people who came into the room, what they looked like, and what they did while they were there. Yet when these people were brought back, the ones who were blind could no longer see. In his book, Life After Life, Dr. Moody writes, "A doctor told me of his experience in attending a young man who had been pronounced clinically dead. He succeeded in resuscitating the man, who then sued the doctor for bringing him back into this miserable existence from the glory that he had experienced. One woman, describing her situation after she had suffered a respiratory arrest, reports that the doctors trying to resuscitate her were pounding on her body, trying to get her back, while she was over them, looking down and saying, 'Leave me alone.'" The Apostle Paul explains why in chapter 5, verses 1 and 2 of his second letter to the Corinthians. "For we know that if the earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, an eternal house in heaven, not built by human hands. Meanwhile we groan, longing to be clothed instead with our heavenly dwelling." The bottom line is this: when you die, you really come to life. And that's the word for you today. Just a reminder to all of you, we've got worship this Sunday at 9 and 11. If you can't join us in person, please join us on our Facebook page or on our YouTube channel at the Village Church at World Golf Village. Have a wonderful weekend, church. We love you.